we now switch to a totally new chapter, which is a huge chapter, probably the biggest chapter in our lecture here this semester. It's about change management. Who of you has ever heard this term change management? Okay. 5. This is something which you definitely will experience in your career. Either as a victim or as a leader. Okay? So maybe you will benefit from change management or you will do change management. That will be definitely relevant. What is a change? A change is not a change of an individual manager. It's not the daily change. When we talk about change, I talk about this in more detail. We mean significant strategic changes in a company. Yeah? Really significant strategic changes of which many employees are impacted. Yeah. Okay? So we talk about the big things. Yeah? I will show you some examples, what is meant by a change and what are the major types of changes which we find in organizations. And what we deal with is, there's a quote saying, people like changes, but they don't want to be changed. Right? You don't want to be changed. You want to be as you are. And changes are always a pain. Not always, but can be a pain. You must adjust yourself. You must develop new behavioral patterns. Sometimes you must change your attitudes. Yeah? So at the end, people must change. If you want to run changes in organizations, the people need to change. And people don't want to be changed. So what we find with changes always, and we talk about this, is resistance. And resistance is dysfunctional. Okay? Companies don't want to have people who resist to change. But what we do is we try to understand what is the typical human reaction to change. So this is very much about psychology here. Third question, how can employees be led through changes by applying change management measures? So then we talk about what is change management all about? Change management is about leading people through changes. And we talk about things like communication, we talk about things like involving the people, we talk about training, all these kind of things. Okay, and finally, we ask the question: which conditions are required to effectively manage change? What is the required environment that makes change management really effective? Okay, so please give me a concrete example of a change. What comes to your mind?
Let's say financial crisis and how we have to adapt, what we have to change in our company.
So there is a financial crisis, and some banks have to change. What do they change? Strategies, right? Change strategies. What else? Question to all. Banks must change. So what do they change? Is there anything that comes to your mind? Strategy, whatever that is. Yeah, please.
Now they have a change in that they let a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, they let some people go and restructure internally.
Okay, restructuring. They restructured the organization. Yeah, put together some departments, split departments, changing the hierarchy, changing the organizational structure, laying off people, right? Okay, changing bonus systems, right? Changing a bonus system, that's significant, right? So, here is an overview about the typical changes which we find in organizations. Okay, I'd like you not only to understand these different types of changes, but also have some real examples in mind. Okay, so you already mentioned this restructuring. I mean, you will experience this in your career. We have organizational structure. There's the executive board, and there are divisions, blah, 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 and that. I want to change this. That is meant by restructuring. To give you a very concrete example, very simplified. On the left side, we have an organization. It's IT company. They produce PCs and printers. Right? Very simple. And here we have, on the first level, marketing, production, and sales. Of course, there are much more. Okay, to simplify it. And underneath these different functions, we have the different product lines. Yeah? PC, printer. The same with production. PC, printer. Now, you can run an organization like this. Okay? So we have big divisions: marketing, taking care for everything; production, taking care for everything; sales. Yeah? And here in this case, the head of marketing directly reports to the executive board or is a member of the executive board. The head of PC is not. Okay? It's different with the organizational structure on the right-hand side. Here the organization works in that way that the company consists of two major divisions. There is the PC division and there is the printer division. And within these different functions we have marketing, production, sales. So on the left side we have one big production department, so to speak. On the right-hand side we have two independent production units. Okay? And now we could discuss what is better. This is not the discussion here. The point is that we find a lot of companies that switch between the different models. Okay? Maybe there is a company where the executive board says, okay, in the past we had the function-oriented organization. In the future we will have a product-oriented organization. And if you change this, and if you switch from one model to another, you can imagine that the roles of some people will change. Yeah? For instance, here on the left-hand side we have one big production unit. And they do both PCs and printers. On the left side you split this department into two independent departments. One department takes care for PC and the other for printer. And they do all the things, marketing, production, sales, independently. Right? So that affects a lot of people. Okay? And this is meant by restructuring. Okay? Next point, re-engineering. You might have not heard about this before. Companies have processes. What is a process? A process is a line of different actions, so to speak. I'll give you a very simplified example. When you have applied at this university, when you have applied here, you submitted a Zulassungsantrag, an application. Right? So we get the application. Hopefully, you got a notification that we got your application. Did you? Okay, great. That's a good idea. You got a notification. The next step is we look at whether the application is complete. Okay. Then the next step is we have kind of pre-selection. We look at some criteria. Then with the pre-selected applications, they move to a team of professors really who look at all the applications, sign and evaluate, and then you get a notification, and then blah blah blah. So there are steps. Or you provide some services to a company, yeah. You provide a service to a company, as IB Consulting or student consulting company. You send an invoice to the company. What happens with the invoice? There is somebody there who gets the invoice. The next step is to check whether the invoice is correct with regards to some formalities. Okay. Then it's checked whether the invoice as such is okay. Then blah blah blah. So you have always steps. In production, in sales, in marketing, in purchase, you have always processes. Yeah? Different actions, different steps. Now, you can do things very differently. Yeah? You can change processes, of course. Yeah? You can reshape the sequence of different actions. You can add actions. You can remove actions. So whenever companies change the processes, different actions, then we talk about re-engineering. And they do this in order to increase quality or to increase efficiency. And again, if you change this, some people are affected by this. If a company implements SAP, this has a huge impact on how the people work, really. Okay, companies really have to adjust their processes to the software and not vice versa. Okay, so this is meant by re-engineering. Something you are familiar with because we read about these things in the public media are mergers and acquisitions. Give me an example. Sorry? Daimler Chrysler. Failed. Yeah. What else? Some examples for mergers, acquisitions. Sony Ericsson. Yeah. I mean, we constantly hear about these things. One company is buying another, and we talk about an acquisition. Or two companies merge. It's kind of a marriage. Yeah. And two companies become one company. Yeah. That happens constantly, right? And I mean, you will also experience this probably. One day, the CEO of your company will ask all the employees, "Can you come to the canteen this afternoon? I have to tell you something." Yeah, and all people are curious. What does he have to tell? And then your CEO will tell you, "I must tell you that we were just acquired by another company. Now we will become Bosch." Yeah? Before we were Max Fleischer Electric, now we are Bosch. In the future we will belong to Bosch. You will be a Bosch employee in the future. I mean, that's powerful. And that affects the people. They will be scared. There will be an insecurity, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of these things. Strategy change. We just had the example of the banks. You change the business. You change your priorities. Yeah. We have a lot of companies in the automotive industry. We said, well, in the past our focus was on SUVs. Now we will focus on the future on e-vehicles. Yeah. We have companies in Germany like TUI. TUI, yeah. What was TUI in the past? Preußack. Preußack. Yeah. Steel manufacturer. Okay. Totally different company. Mannesmann, also steel manufacturer in the mobile industry. We always find these strategic changes, and And when we talk about strategic changes, we talk about the ultimate purpose of a company. Why are we there? What will we do? Yeah? What are our markets? What are our products? And these things can significantly change. Right? And then last thing which I want to mention here are cultural change. What is culture? What is company culture? Any ideas? What can?
Well, just everything, the mindsets of how they're supposed to work.
Yeah.
And the cultural change example would, for example, be some American banks that had to undergo a cultural change, or had to say that they would undergo one. Because of their
Okay.
problems.
So very important term, your mindset. Yeah, and definitely in some banks there must be a change of the mindset, the way people think, the way how people understand their work and the purpose of the work. We talk about the values of the people, what is important to the people. I mentioned an example earlier with, in Germany, the Deutsche Bahn. The Deutsche Bahn. I mean, in earlier days, that was pure logistic. Even transporting people from A to B, that was logistic. People were treated like packages, right? And today, people must be treated like customers, like guests. That means that the employees of Deutsche Bahn must totally change the way they deal with the people. And that's about changing values, changing attitudes, yeah? Changing the mindset. Okay, I have an example here to focus on leadership culture. Example number one. We want our people to behave like adults. That's why we treat them that way. Each employee is responsible for what he or she decides. We believe in our people's own initiative to contribute to our company's success. Everybody at his or her place. We do everything to avoid static structures, order or control. We simply don't need it. You get a feeling about this culture? Who would like to work in a culture like this? Yeah, me too. That's why I'm here. Yeah. Right example. People need structure and guidance. That's why our leaders will never stop telling our employees as clearly as possible what's expected from them. Control is better than trust. Organizations need rules, and rules always need somebody who takes care for them. Nobody wants to suffer from corporate chaos. Yeah. Do you feel like? Do you feel how that is? Yeah. Who would like to work in a company like this? As a leader, right? Yeah. Okay. Both leadership cultures exist. We find both. And maybe you have companies in your mind where you would say, well, I can imagine that in company A it's rather like the left side, in company B it's like the right side. I met some companies in the past which said, well, yesterday I visited a company. The CEO told me, we are on the right side. The people in the last decades, they were used to clear structure and they were used to clear guidance. They always did what their boss told them to do. That's why he's the boss and I'm only the employee. Very much top down. In the last decades, people were used to this kind of system. But we will not survive with that system in the future. I want a leadership culture which is much more like the one on the left-hand side. I want the people that they think, that they take over responsibility. I want to avoid rules. People should know what's good or bad because, hey, they are adults and I don't want to treat my company like a kindergarten. Okay? How can a company switch from one side to another? Or what does it mean if a company really wants to change its culture in that way? That's what we talk about. And this is just one example of a cultural change. You find a lot of other examples out there, but that's the point here. Okay? To summarize at this point, we find restructuring, changing the organizational structure, re-engineering, changing the way people work, the sequence and nature of the different actions. You find mergers, acquisitions, changes with regards to the ultimate priorities of a company, and cultural changes. Okay? People's life is always impacted by decisions, right? Your life depends on decisions. And some decisions are decisions that you make, and some decisions are decisions that others make over you. When you are an employee in a company, you very often find yourself in a situation where executives decides and you are affected by the decision. You can say you are, to a certain extent, a victim. Yeah? Okay, you are affected by decisions made by others. Okay. Let's talk about this. We talk about changes which are decided not by yourself, but you are affected by these decisions. And whenever we talk about change management, or we talk about the question how people react to changes which they have not decided by themselves, this curve comes into play. You find this curve in almost any book about change management. It's emotional curve, emotional response curve, however we name it. This curve was not invented, so to speak, as part of change management. This curve exists since more than 50 years, nearly 50 years. It was invented by a Swiss researcher, Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. She was a physician, a doctor, and in very early years, she started dealing with one question, and the question is how people die. I mean, we know how people die. But that's complicated, maybe. I don't know. It's about the emotional response of people when they learn that they have to die because of cancer or what else. So, to an employee, a person is told that due to cancer, he or she will die in the next 4 months. That's the situation we talk about now. And Kübler-Ross, she dealt with these people. She did thousands of interviews with these people and tried to understand how people cope to a situation like this. And it's very exciting. And based on thousands of interviews, she wrote a book on death and dying. And she proposed a model like this. She said, number one, this is something that you need to take home. People respond to the message that they will die not somehow. They react in a very systematic way. There is a pattern behind. Okay? And the pattern is like this. Let's assume that in that particular situation where a person learns that he or she will die, emotional response, emotional stability, emotional situation is somewhere in the middle. It's balanced, right? As we are balanced. That's fine. Now you learn that you will die. The first thing is a kind of shock, immobilization, shock. That's in that moment you are not able to think. You are overwhelmed by this information, and you are by far not able to cope with this information. That's massive. That's too much, and your brain protects you in that particular moment, and you are in a mode of unconsciousness, a kind of unconsciousness. You are very conscious, but your brain stops thinking because it's too much. It's protection in that moment. But then you get back, and you start denial. You say, no, that can't be true. You mix me up with another patient. I mean, it can't be me. I mean, cancer, that is something that happens to my neighbor, but not to me. Yeah. So you deny this information, but you learn that no, it's true. You ultimately must understand that it's true. And then what happens to most people is that they run into a phase of anger. Why me? That's not fair. I mean, I lived a healthy life. I treated other people well, and so on. So why me? Yeah, it's not okay. So anger. You're angry about why that happens. What we find then is that people start to bargain. They negotiate with whomever, with God, saying, "Hey, give me a second chance. I will change my life. I know I did some things wrong, but I will do everything, but give me another chance." But at the end, people learn that you can deny it, you can be angry, you can negotiate, you can whatever you do. I mean, it will not change the situation. You will die. Full stop. That's it. That's the truth. And when people learn that nothing helps, and that applies for human beings in general, when you learn that independent from what you do, it will not change your situation. Once you learn that you don't have an impact on your situation, you are a victim, you come into a mood which psychologists name as learned helplessness. You learn that you are helpless. And when people learn that they are helpless, the probability for a kind of depressive mood is very high. I mean, that's one reason of depression. We learn from psychological research that you can even make dogs depressive through some very simple methods. If you make them learn that whatever they do will not change the situation. Depression is very often a result of I learned that I am a victim, I can't change everything. Yeah? So, then, coming from depression, people used to start developing new behavioral patterns. They start to behave in new ways. They start to look at their current situation from a new perspective. They make really change their mind. You very often hear the sentence, well, now, for me, every day is so intense like a year in my life before. So, and I'm happy about every year which I can spend with my family. And it was never so intense. And I'm happy about this. Yeah, not maybe happy, but positive. So people find new ways, finding a new perspective, how to look on things, and then they move into a level of acceptance. So we know that not for every person this model applies in the same way. Yeah. The only thing I want you to take home, and this is widely accepted in the context of change management, is that people do not respond somehow to changes. They respond in a systematic way. That's point number one. Point number two, some responses are very dysfunctional. Angriness is dysfunctional. Yeah? Depression is dysfunctional. Yeah? The idea here is that when you tell the people in a company, not that they will die, you tell people, we will shut down your department. We are acquired by Bosch. we will stop producing the products which we have produced in the last 20 years. In the future, we will produce something totally different. You tell the people from one day to another, the way we worked in the past was the old way. In the future, we will work in a totally different way. Whenever you tell something like this to the people, response is seen as similar. Yeah? People say, come on. Oh, shock. Oh, we are acquired by Bosch. Oh, sorry. Then you deny or say, hey, that can't be. I mean, are you kidding? And then the people are angry. Yeah? Why this? And you find this behavior in companies. They are angry. Yeah? They talk about these changes in the breaks and whenever they can. They're angry. But then they find that they can't change anything. It's like it is. Yeah? And people start laying back. Yeah? Okay, might not be depression in that sense, but saying, okay, come on. I do my job. I don't care about the rest. Yeah. And then people start thinking in new ways. Say, hey, Bosch, Bosch, it's a great company. That provides some security also. That provides opportunities. The people start thinking in new ways about this change. Okay, we will produce e-vehicles. I mean, that's great, maybe. Yeah. Okay, I'm really angry that we stopped producing SUVs because I always loved SUVs. That was my life. That was my competence. I have a lot of experiences. But okay, now we produce e-vehicles. Fine, maybe there are some change in it. So people start to think in new ways. But the point is that in the middle, the reactions are dysfunctional. And that can really lead to problems inside a company. Okay? So, one key concept here is something that we find in the middle of this model. It's about resistance. Resistance. We all know what it is. Resistance. Widerstand. People resist to change. We can say this. Okay? Now, there is a lot of literature out there about resistance. How can companies really overcome resistance? How can you deal with resistance? And on this very packed slide, I have summarized the major things which I want you to understand about resistance. Let's talk this through in the next few minutes. Point number one. Whom of you lives in a flat together with other students? Okay. So have you experienced a situation where you are in your room and your peer in the other room, the music in the room of the other student is too loud? You experience it yes, all the time. And you want to learn, yeah? You want to prepare yourself for the accounting exam, but the music in the other room is too loud. That drives you crazy. Why? Because you find yourself in a situation where you cannot control the music. You are a victim of the music. Yeah? You lost control about the situation. It would not be a problem at all if the music would be in your room and if you would know that you can switch it off at any moment. But the mere fact that you cannot switch it off drives you crazy. It's not the music. It's not the music, it's the fact that you can't control it. Okay? Whom of you were ever stuck in an elevator? Oh, panic. That's panic. It was no fun. I mean, that's a situation where you definitely feel from one second to another that you totally lost control over your situation. Okay? I mean, it's a very, very extreme example. The point is that you all know Maslow, yeah? The hierarchy of needs. Yeah, of course. Maslow is among the picture that you see the most in your study, beyond SWOT analysis and all this. In psychology, we very often talk about needs. human needs. And there are some psychologists like Carl Rogers who said that there is one fundamental need of people, and the fundamental need of people is control. I'm in control of my situation. And once people feel that they lose control about their situation, that really leads to resistance and in extreme ways to panic. Yeah? So, resistance is a natural human reaction to change. Because why? Because people feel that they are not in the driver's seat. Okay? And then change can be seen very differently by very different people. I mean, you tell employees, yeah, guys, we stop producing this thing. In the future, we produce this thing. You will find resistance in the majority of the people, but it will differ from one individual to another. Because things are seen differently by different people. Example. Imagine you have a child, yeah? And in the night, child, let's say 8 years old. In the night, she calls you, say, Ma, Pa, there is a monster in my room. Yeah? A monster. What will you do? You can say, hey, come on. Monsters don't exist. Yeah? Hey, you are 8 years old, and you should know that there are no monsters. Okay? Okay. Got it? No monster. Got it? No monster. Stop. And then you leave the room. Did you solve the problem? No, not at all. You must accept that this child believes that there is a monster. And now you have to cope with it. Saying, oh, there's a monster in the room. Hey, that's great. Yeah? Was it always there? Where is it? Monsters are nice. Should we give him a name? Yeah? How should we name the monster? Not every child has a monster. Yeah? And it's, how big is it? Should we look for it? Oh, let's have a look in the cave. Maybe there is it. Yeah? It's great. Yeah? Let's talk to the monster a little bit. I would also love to have a monster in my room. Then I would not be so alone. Yeah? You would take it serious. That's the point here. I mean, employees in most companies are adults. Yeah? But the situation is the same. People worry about a change, and you have to take it serious. Yeah? And the way they look at the problem is the way they do it. Okay? So, and very different people look on the same situation from very different angle, and that's the truth in that particular moment, and that's fine. Yeah, in a company I should accept this. And it's not, as pointed out in the third point here on this slide, that those who resist are always the troublemakers. Yeah? It's not that people are troublemakers by nature just because they resist to changes. They simply act as human beings. Okay? A fourth point is very important when we talk about resistance. In all organizations, in all teams, in all companies, we have so-called opinion leaders, or as informal opinion leaders. What is the difference between a formal leader and a opinion leader? Do you have any idea? Yeah?
Well, the formal leader is the guy where it says he's the boss of the department or whatever, and the opinion leader is maybe a colleague of the people that they trust or that have been in the company for a longer time, or that does look up.
Absolutely. Perfect. The formal leader is the boss. Why is he the boss? He's the boss because he's the boss. He has power because he is the boss. That's the formal position. The formal position provides the power. beside these leaders, there are always people, as you said, who also have power. And what is power? I mean, what is power? Think about it. Power is the capability to influence others. If you have the capabilities, the capacity to influence others, you have power. And this not always relates to formal power. It's not that you can influence others because you are the boss, but because the others, they accept you. They count on your opinion. I mean, in every organization which we have this, we also have opinion leaders in this room. There are 1, 2, 3 students in this room. When they say, hey, this lecture is shit, then most others say, yes, probably she's right. While some others who tell some others in the room, when they say, this lecture is shit, the rest would say, oh, come on, yeah, that's your view. And the faculty, the same. Yeah? We have professors in the faculty. If they raise their voice in a long discussion saying, you know what, we can't forget about this, then the discussion is over. Yeah? While when I say something, hey guys, you know we can forget it. Yeah, it's fine, Armin, let's continue. Hey, I'm the same. I'm a professor as anybody else. But we influence each other on different levels. Why? Because people are differently accepted, and that's a very social phenomenon. The point is that whenever we talk about resistance, these informal opinion leaders, they really play a significant role. Okay? They can really change the mind of the people in both directions, in a positive direction or in a negative direction. Next point which I want you to take home. We differentiate between 2 types of resistance. Now, type number 1. People in a department resist, but they don't say it out loud. They would not write a mail to the department head. They just are angry and talk about things in the coffee break. Yeah? In kind of hidden ways. They might, when it comes to extreme, they might sabotage some things. Yeah, that's what we would name a hidden resistance. Hidden. Yeah, it's not visible. While overt resistance, open resistance, visible resistance is people raise their voice and say, okay, we have heard about this change, but, dear executives, we as employees, we have talked about this, and we would not agree that this is the right decision. That's overt. What is better? If you would be an executive, what would you expect? What is better? Yeah?
If they tell you.
Sorry?
If they
tell you. Then you can control it, then you can respond, you can manage the resistance. Okay? Last point is the most important one. And we're going to talk about this in much detail. We know that there is one ultimate way to really avoid resistance, or at least to reduce resistance, which is involvement. Okay? Now imagine, yeah? You live together with your spouse, okay? And one day your spouse tells you, you know, in the next semester break, we will have some holidays in Turkey. I've booked a week in this hotel. How would be your response? Thanks, yeah, super. No, you would say, okay, oh, wonderful, but I mean, you have to pay for it. It's not that you are invited. Right? It's you pay for it. You pay 50% of everything. You would say, That's nice, but why haven't we talked about it? To all men in the room, never do this. Yeah, if you do something like this and you will be there and things are not 100% fine, you are in deep trouble. Yeah. Not my own experience, just a recommendation. If you involve your spouse saying, let's make the decision together, then there will be no criticism. Even the food is worse, the beach is bad. If you made a joint decision, both parties will accept how the situation will be. If you involve the people, they much more accept the future situation. I talk about this, how you can manage this. How can companies manage involvement? How can companies do this very concretely? Okay. Let me add one last thing today. There is not only a reaction to decisions made by others. This is what we talked about in the last minutes. Yeah? How people react on changes decided by others, where I'm a victim. We also find typical reactions on decisions you made about yourself. I mean, that's a very nice idea which I would like to add. By the way, there is a book which I highly can recommend from Daryl Conner. The book is named Managing at the Speed of Change. To me, one of the most important books about change management, especially when it comes to the psychological aspects. A great book. If you will work as a consultant somewhere, you must read this book. Yeah? And he also pointed out this model, and I like this very much. Imagine, after your holidays in Turkey, you and your spouse, you decide to marry. Okay? Because holiday was fine. Now, you marry, and the first reaction to your own decision is always positive. We married. Tell my friend. Yeah, post it on Facebook. We married. Like. Okay. The next question is when. Okay, in 8 months. Now 1 month, next month. And you start to prepare the marriage. Whom to invite? What to do with Uncle Kurt? Should we really invite him? No, yes, no, we must. Okay, location, clothes. Do you really want to invite this friend? No, he will kill the marriage. No, but I must. I was invited in his marriage as well. It will become complicated. Yeah? It will become complicated. And from a situation of uninformed optimism, naivety, you move into a level of informed pessimism. Am I right? And hopefully you do not exceed the level of tolerance, because otherwise you will quit the process. You will say, no, that was definitely a bad idea. Exit. Okay. You cope with the situation, you cope with the complexity, you make it. And then you move into a stage of hopeful realism, informed optimism, and then completion. It's always the same. It's also with projects. When you work in a project, when you are the project lead, you will have the project team together. You make a kickoff. And at the end of the kickoff, you have a get-together, which means drinking a lot. And you are really optimistic. Great project. And then you continue and complexity increases and everything. You start writing your thesis. You decide upon the topic. Yes, I got a great topic about my thesis. And you're really happy. Hey, you are naive at this moment. You are totally uninformed. And the more you learn, the more you enter this complexity, the more it scares you, the more you feel that, that was a bad idea. And hopefully you do not extend the level of tolerance. But if you continue, you probably will make it to cope with the complexity. So it's not always that you have some